In the beginning, I have to turn my paints on and warm them up. The paint is applied at about 200 degrees, and it does take a few minutes for that to happen. So I will often go out into the yard or some other location and do some drawing. So I'm warming up my paints at the same time that I'm warming up my hand and my eye to prepare the time for work that's fully engaged. The beginning of a painting is always an interesting time. Even the making of the panel and putting the special gesso on it is part of the process. I'm often thinking about the layers that will follow and what they might look like. Certainly the image is floating around in my mind, and color possibilities and paint application. So it is an important part of the process as you make the panel. In fact, it's important enough to me that I would not have anybody else make them. I love to feel the work from the very beginning through its completion. The panel is a cabinet grade birch plywood, and it's fully braced, and then it has a special encaustic gesso on it which can withstand the heat treatment that it will be subjected to. Early in the work, I like to locate the basic elements of composition with special wax-based pencil, and I keep it very fluid at that point and just sort of generalize, trying to get the ideas of where the essential forms will fall based on my sketches and the ideas that are moving around in my head. Early in the painting, I begin with the basic shapes of the painting. Kind of laying out a value structure using warm underpaint, since many of the areas in this particular image are going to be cool, particularly the green band at the bottom. I usually follow a warm underpaint with filling in between with sort of a pearly gray. This gives a nice contrast between the warm and cool, and all of a sudden you've started to create a kind of space for your image to rest in. A little later on in the painting, I begin to add something approaching the final color, and I will work from back to front to really push the development of the space. Throughout the painting process, I think of different ways to apply the paint. There are times when I'll use very stiff bristle brushes. Other times I'll use a very large brush. I might use a putty knife or palette knife, and at times even a spackle blade to apply and to push the paint around. I do a lot of scraping in the painting as well to reveal layers from underneath. The initial stages of the painting, that's not really a problem because it keeps things very fluid and it allows you to not be too precious about it. But later on, as you get more and more detail put forth in the work, you do have to be quite consistent with your application of heat, and you have to be able to focus very clearly on it. Any distractions can result in losing a lot of that detail and hard-won form. After each layer of paint has been applied, you need to fuse it by turning the panel horizontally and passing a heat source over the surface of it until it just warms up enough to fuse it to the layer before. If you overheat it, things will all run together. When the painting is completely done, I do put it on its side again horizontally and do the final burn in, which usually takes a good bit of time depending on the size of the painting. And in that, I'd be sure that every bit of the painting is fused to the layers underneath. And that is the actual process that the name encaustic refers to. The painting has to be burned in. Otherwise, it's not an encaustic painting. The paint itself is made of pure beeswax with damar varnish crystals, about 80% or better of beeswax and say 5 to 10% of the damar. And then the remaining ingredient in the paint is dry pigment. And I heat them up to about 200 degrees and then put the powdered pigment in. So that's simply the paint that you work with. There is no oil paint in this. It's just dry paint, dry pigment, and beeswax. It is the most ancient and among the most ancient and permanent of media. It will never darken, yellow, crack, or fade. It is applied at about 200 degrees, so that is the melting point generally when you have it in your possession. So it's a very stable medium. It tends to resist water. And when you're all finished with your painting, you buff it with a soft cotton cloth, and it brings up the luster to the painting. Periodically, when I have paintings around the house, I will buff them up and bring up that luster again. Changes in humidity can cause that luster to go away, and then you buff it again, it brings it right back up. And actually, as my wife often remarks, it's a sort of a personal interaction you can have with your painting. You won't damage it. In fact, you actually continue to harden it when you do that. So finally, when I sign the painting, I incise my name and fill it with hot wax and then scrape away to sort of encapsulate the signature in the film of wax. This painting was done from sketches actually completed this summer during an artist-in-residence stay in Morocco. My wife and I were in the city of Tetuan for 5 weeks, and Steve chose images from that journey for this painting, and it's wonderfully fitting since much of his aesthetic kind of derives from that source.